Where was there left for Torchwood to go after Children of Earth, its third series, after it had been promoted year after year all the way up to the BBC One, after it had gotten so highly commended and acclaimed and recognised, and after it concluded its character stories with such utter finality? Where else but America? Just about 2 years to the exact day after Children of Earth premiered came Torchwood Miracle Day, a co-production between the BBC and the American premium cable channel Starz, set primarily in America, with new American lead characters, including one played by Bill Pullman, famously the American president in the very American movie Independence Day, and new American writers and all that jazz. Like Children of Earth, the whole Miracle Day series centered on the one big story, the one big idea. What if one day everybody on Earth stopped dying? What if nobody could die? With double the episode order of Children of Earth, so 10 episodes in full, it then set out to explore the possibilities and ramifications of an immortal human race with conspiracy shenanigans and media craziness, and very little of the sort of alien hijinks that Torchwood used to feature, but a lot more of the American thriller and American sci-fi hijinks the show was inspired by in the first place. While it started out being received well, the prevailing critical consensus ended up being, and still is generally, that it went off the rails, and the fact that a fifth season never came to pass on television was, in fact, no enormous loss. But what did we think of the series in general? Should we start with the Scottish woman, the British man, or would it be most appropriate to start with the American?
I nominate the American.
Same.
American, what do you think?
I think it's interesting you didn't go with the gender for me. Miracle Day. Now this was... I got a history with this show. I watched it and didn't much care for it, and that's the history. But then again, that's the American history of Torchwood in general. But to be more serious, this was 2011. This was right when Moffat was making the big American push for Doctor Who, the push that inevitably got me as well. And with Miracle Day, even though it's a Davies production, sort of, and I'm sure we'll get into that later in greater detail, Miracle Day is intensely American, not just set in America and co-produced, but goes to extraordinary lengths to really address things that were going on in the United States in 2011. Things political and cultural and sociological, things that we're still dealing with today. Healthcare, same-sex marriage.
Concentration camps?
Concentration camps, yeah, thank you. I'm trying to avoid that topic until later. It's powerful stuff, and when it's on form, it is, I think, one of the best Doctor Who productions that have ever been. The highlights of Miracle Day are so wonderful and sick and horrible in all the best ways. But when it falls apart, oh boy does it fall apart. I mean, this is stratospheric highs and abyssal lows is the only way I can refer to it, is the only way I can describe Miracle Day.
Yeah.
Which makes it a good companion to Series 6.
Yeah. What did the British think?
I feel like I really enjoyed it the first time I watched it. I thought it was, well, most of it anyway. But I feel like that it's a show that doesn't hold up to rewatch. Because I really, really enjoy the character stuff. I love what it does for the original Torchwood cast. But when it comes to anything plot related or even Americans related, no offence, Mirrors, I just don't have any interest in it. And that's only on a rewatch. When I was first going through it, which was pretty recently, my first time watching it, I was enthralled by it. Even when it wasn't at its sort of peak quality, I was like, well, this seems to be going somewhere really interesting. So I was excited, and then I got to the finale, and it didn't go anywhere at all. So when I rewatch it, I struggle to care about the plot specifically because I know that it ends so shittily. But I still really, really love all the sort of character moments. I think that's great, and there's still stuff to appreciate about it. But it's kind of like one of those things that don't bother rewatching all of it because it's really not worth it. That's what I think. Unless you're Neil, who thinks it's the greatest thing ever created.
I wouldn't put it that far, but Gig,
Yeah, he would.
what did you think?
Well, if you, having binged it, if you thought the finale made it retroactively not worth watching, imagine having watched it 1 episode a week for 10 weeks. Yeah, imagine having spent that whole time wondering where it's going to go, how it's going to end, what the mystery behind the miracle and the 3 families, what it's all going to come down to, and getting that. So, suffice to say, I hadn't revisited Miracle Day in like the 8 years since it originally premiered. But binging through it now, while, yeah, a lot of it is kind of tinged with that, knowing it doesn't ultimately go anywhere, that also removes a lot of the expectations that maybe people went into it with originally. So, I was sort of able to dismiss a lot of it. And a lot of it is dismissible. A lot of the stuff feels like padding, some of it's quite turgid, subplots with the American characters, yeah, and the American characters themselves are quite relatively two-dimensional compared to, say, Gwen and Jack and Reese and so on, and even PC Andy. But I did find that the 2 episodes that are sort of considered really good ones, so the ones where the ovens are revealed and the one with Jack's flashback, those still hold up. Those are still 2 very good episodes. I maybe found that the ovens episode wasn't quite as amazing as I remembered it being, maybe just because it's so saturated in Miracle Day-ness now, whereas the Jack flashback episode is still really good. But one episode that I enjoyed more than I thought I would was the plane one. And stuff... Yes. Yeah. Stuff like the plane hijinks. Like, there was more of that stuff than I remembered. And so, the thing is, the series is capable of being fun and entertaining when it needs to be. And I think if you could really, some people say like, well, yeah, okay, it was too long. It should have just been Children of Earth length. But I think you could snip it down, maybe only like 1 or 2 episodes shorter, and get a much more coherent series while still telling the same overall arc.
Oh yeah.
What's interesting when we talk about episode orders is that I see a lot of fan wisdom that there's even rumors originally it was plotted out to be 5 episodes and then expanded out, which kind of makes sense because you see there are so many clear filler episodes where, you know, very little happens, or at least the drama doesn't really move forward. Episodes 2, 3, 4, 6, 8.
Isn't that the conclusion that Elle came to on her eruditorum coverage of
Well,
Miracle
what's
Day?
fascinating is it's completely and utterly wrong. The original episode order wasn't 5 episodes and it wasn't 10 episodes. When they were originally breaking the season, so this was when Chris Chibnall was involved, which was only very
it was going to be 22 episodes.
It was for 13 episodes.
Oh.
So initially, when they broke the story, it was plotted out for 13, and they still have plot beats that, you know, there's a 13th episode that was set basically after the finale we got, which was like a coda of everyone reacting to death coming back into the world. And then what would happen is the blessing would expand outward and start inverting and start killing everyone in its radius. And they'd have to try and stop that. And they'd do that by nuking Shanghai. Oh, that was...
Jesus!
Yeah.
What the hell?
Uh-oh.
This was the original planned finale for Miracle Day before they moved it down to 10 episodes from Stars' order.
Are you talking shit? Is any word of what you just said, is any single word of that you just said true at all?
Swear to God, you can listen to the episode 10 commentary.
In episode 7, where Reese and the family are held hostage, that now happens off stage and gets solved very quickly. In the 13 episode version, that was a lot bigger. Nice, this sequence. This was always the point. Do you remember? Way back when we plotted this with Jane Espenson and Chris Chibnall, it wasn't about Shanghai, and it wasn't about Buenos Aires, and it wasn't about 3 families, and it wasn't about any of that. It was about this moment of bringing death back to the world.
Well, when it was a 13-part series, there was a whole episode virtually that was the coda episode of people dying and how it changes the world. I kind of missed that episode.
That's right. Yeah, it's compacted into...
Yeah, I wish we'd had longer with that.
I always wish we never got into that. I always want... In the 13-part version, this all ended in episode 12. And in my favourite version, then the blessing went into reverse at episode 13 and started killing everyone. That was fantastic. And
that is
literally,
brilliant.
They were having to drop a nuke on Shanghai and things like that. There was no way of stopping it. Its sort of malign influence was spreading out. Do you remember, it was spreading out in a circle a millimetre at a time, but would never stop, would cover the entire world. And if you stood in that field, you were dead. Oh, it was good, that.
it was really good, and I was the evil voice that thought it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Because it was good. I still love it, but I didn't think we could do justice to that in one episode.
No.
I don't mean production-wise, I mean story-wise.
No, I gave up on it because I literally thought it was breaking any budget. I mean, literally, it was nuking Shanghai and doing things.
Yes,
that
it felt a bit too mad.
That's insane.
Yep.
Nuking Shanghai.
43 minutes in the commentary, Julie Gardner and Russell T Davies.
Jesus.
That whole thing about the blessing inverting and killing everyone, you know what that reminds me of? The Series 1 finale of Torchwood with Abaddon popping up and slaughtering the entirety of Cardiff. It's just the sort of stuff that I just don't think Torchwood should do.
Where Miracle Day sort of does feel off to me, in the same reason that, whatchamacallit, what was the season 1 finale called? I don't know.
End of Days?
Wow. I think you just said it as well. I immediately forgot it. Anyway, when it comes to something really big, and
it's very forgettable.
Yeah, I'll exclude the 456 in this, because the 456 was like, well, I'll say that in a minute, actually. Anyway, I feel like when things get to large scale, it just, I don't know, it's not that it doesn't work for Torchwood, it just becomes a bit, I don't know, it loses the charm of it, because,
No, finish your thought. I've Russell thought you'll enjoy.
Oh boy, okay. I hope it doesn't contradict everything I'm saying. Anyway, I feel like... don't inhale like that, meaningfully. Anyway, I feel like it works at really small scale, and part of the charm is of Torchwood, especially, for example, in Series 1 and Series 2, is that it's smaller, they're just dealing with sort of day-to-day things, whereas, like, also the bigger stuff, like, theoretically would be left up to the Doctor, but also the 456... I can't fucking speak. The 456 comes along, and the 456 is a bigger sort of thing. But even then, it didn't feel like it was a huge thing in a sense, because it was still ultimately it was just people sitting in rooms having discussions, and you know it never felt like huge scale, even though it was. But then Miracle Day comes along, and suddenly it's international, and everything's going on, and they're in Shanghai, and they're gonna nuke Shanghai. No, of course they didn't. But it almost feels like too big to be comfy. But I feel like that's why scenes like the plane scene, they work so well, and I enjoyed them so much in the series, because they were that sort of like a smaller scale disaster almost. So, you know, it was so specific. Also, it was like Jack had been poisoned, and it wasn't like dealing with aliens or anything. But it was like you could have watched an episode, you know, an episodic episode on its own. It was just, but then it was really sort of put out across the whole episode, like the plane thing intercut with Vera and stuff. But yeah, I really like the smaller scale stuff. I really like the smaller scale character stuff. And what I feel was missing in Miracle Day is that it was too big, and it wasn't focused enough, basically.
Yeah, I have two thoughts off that thought. The first is, well, it's not my thought, it's Russell T Davies' thought, and I think you'll dislike it because it's going to what you say about how Torchwood transformed from the comfy, more episodic alien hijinks episodes of the first two series. And he said in the promotion of Miracle Day,
the whole point of Torchwood stories now is to take a science fiction element, a concept, and to drop it into the middle of society, into the middle of us in the Western world, as to see who we become then.
To him, the show has completely transformed into this idea of just a vehicle for high concept science fiction mega stories, which I think definitely didn't tend to resonate with the fandom. Everyone loves Children of Earth, but to make the show into Children of Earth 2 and like that to become the common mode of the show afterwards, I question the wisdom of that idea.
Children of Earth was like it was still sort of character focused and everything, which I think is, by character focus I mean it was specifically focused on the characters we care about, whereas Miracle Day was like, it was shoving all these other characters at us who weren't well written and expecting us to give a shit. And I would like, that's why I struggled to rewatch in a sense, because I know when the American stuff is and when the Jack and Gwen stuff is, and I just spend the entire time waiting for the Jack and Gwen stuff.
Well, the interesting thing I found in my rewatch was that I remembered Miracle Day very much as this one big story that just all flowed into itself, and it was like a 9-10 hour movie or whatever. But on rewatch, I found that really isn't so much it didn't feel like the case to me, and I think a lot of this is because this was written in an American writer's room where, they broke the season together, but then individual writers tended to write their episodes off the planning they'd done as a group. But pretty much every episode is got its own, like episode 1 is, the beginning, Jack's comeback, all that stuff. Episode 2 is very focused on almost the bottle episode inside the plane with the assassin. Episode 3 is pretty much linkage material. Then episode 4 really has its individual arc with that Tea Party woman saying dead is dead, and that nameless assassin guy that is tailing everyone as they go to LA. Episode 5 is the mystery of what the modules are at the overflow camps. Episode 6 is dealing with the fallout from that and it's even got the word middlemen is like the thematic core of that episode that they say in different contexts, and it's all about that idea of middlemen. Episode 7 is obviously the flashback. And it's right
there in the middle of the series.
Right in the middle of the series, yeah.
6 out of 10, yeah.
Episode 7 is the flashback episode. Episode 8 is the We Have No Money, and Jane Espenson had to rewrite this at the 11th hour because it really wasn't working, so it all takes place in one room and basically nothing happens in it.
What was I rewriting? Episode 8 had to have massive rewrites done to it because, as much as we love episode 8, it's not our finest hour.
It had to be rewritten.
It had to be written
production reasons.
Absolutely. It was kind of like 4 and 8 had to be written big time to be cheaper. They were simply very expensive, and the original version of episode 8, which was extraordinary and lavish, and as you've probably seen by this stage now, it just takes place in one room into which various interesting people keep walking in. First of all, Newman walks in, and then Q from Star Trek walks in, then they discover there's something under the floor. It's a lesson in how to make interesting things happen in one room. Maybe.
Episode 9 is time skip. Episode 10 is, big Earth, big ionic structure in the Earth. Like, they were much more delineated than I remembered, but they're not done that distinctly in how they're actually realized. That they do kind of form mush in your head, but I was surprised how much they are actually pretty bam, 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 got their own little cores to them.
Ping, ping, ping.
Patang, patang, patang.
I think that sort of goes to something that I've felt about Miracle Day for a while. Miracle Day is a lot of fun to have watched, but not so much fun to watch, if you follow my meaning. It blurs together in your head, and you kind of forget the really bad parts, and you just remember how wonderful and sick it is. Which I suppose is for the best, because ultimately that is where the fiction we infozorb lives the longest, is in our memories rather than right in front of our eyes. I feel the same way about 2001. The movie and the year.
You can remember that far back?
It's... Yeah, the thing with Miracle Day that frustrates me the most isn't actually the finale. It's like all the episodes before the finale, really. It's that this was a really... It was a really interesting...
The entire series is just shit.
It's such an interesting idea, this idea that no one can die, and it's such a classic science fiction. We can make all the metaphors from this, we can make so much commentary on healthcare and society and, government response to crises. There's so much you can do with it. And it kind of does now and again, but I feel like it was so no hand on the rudder for so much at the time. Like, we don't really... we have Gwen's father is sick, and all, and he ends up having a second heart attack, and then he's just comatose for, the rest of the series, but we never really, feel his experience of, what it is to be a Category 1. I feel like it's so removed. It's so much characters in rooms talking about, oh, this means that, but we...
It's like the kids in Children of Earth.
Yeah,
we never get their perspective.
Exactly. I feel like we're so removed from the actual... we get some of it in the first 5 episodes with Vera, the doctor character, who's who reverses the process of triage, and she's making lots of commentary on how healthcare needs to change, and that's interesting, and it kind of drips away, and we never really got that much of it in the first place. And what we get is these CIA runarounds, and it's so much less interesting than what I thought would flow on from this actual idea of, if no one could die, what does that say about the world? What changes, or what doesn't change? And I felt like we were getting a story about the story, not the actual story, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I would argue that, to me, one of the best parts about the character of Rex Matheson, who I have a ton of things to say about, one of the things that I think is really strong about that character is the degree to which how they sort of subtly make him initially it's subtle, and then later on it becomes more and more hammered in. He's the person that we get the experience of being dead from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's and I agree that it probably should have been Gwen's father, or at least have an episode just from his perspective, but with Rex we really get, the constant pain, the worrying about how people are going to treat him, what's going to happen to him. And I think that, and I feel like we'll probably get into this more later as well, I feel like if there had been a Davies version of Miracle Day, Rex would have been a much more well-realized character.
On the point of social commentary and structure and things like that, it strikes me that perhaps something that really hobbles the series in terms of being a true successor to Children of Earth and doing what r.t.d. wanted about, how would society respond to this sci-fi concept, is that whereas in Children of Earth, you have a very clearly delineated alien threat, which then we see just the desperately mundane kind of bureaucratic system and trying to respond to in a way that reveals the closeness of the world system to total collapse. In Miracle Day, what you get is, first you have this wondrous phenomenon of the blessing and the miracle. Then you have this even more vague phenomenon of the three families, of this, shadowy New World Order conspiracy that's lurking in the background that can do anything. And so much of the series is spent chasing after that with a ton of procedural stuff to try and unravel the conspiracy, and how do they make this happen, and how do they set this up, and what are they planning to do, and they've got moles here and there, and how are we going to stop them, and blah blah. And there's so much of this sort of plotty business that all that stuff really undercuts the actual Children of Earth style material, which is mostly consigned to kind of glib like bits and pieces here and there, or the occasional quite good episode like Categories of Life. So it's like I wish the series had less of a plot, basically.
I feel like the first 6 episodes are... I know a lot of... You said episode 7 is your favorite, and a lot of people say that it gets stronger towards the end, but to me, the first 5 or 6 episodes, where it's most concerned with the miracle and the ramifications of it, and how it's affecting society and government and religion, that's the strong material. That's the Children of Earth-ish material. And when it goes into more of the conspiracy thriller stuff, it really gets weaker.
Episode 7 is a favourite because it's a character study, not because it necessarily furthers the shit plot.
Oh yeah,
the funny thing about episode 7 is what people widely regard as the best episode of Miracle Day has the least to do with, the Miracle Day. It's
just because it focuses so much on a character that the people already love, and it's a character that has so much mystery about him, and it doesn't... Angela, yeah. It doesn't... Shut up. It doesn't reveal Jack's past in a way that feels intrusive. It's a fascinating insight into Jack and also into Gwen at points. But yes, anyway, finally, Neil, you're allowed to speak.
Okay. This is another fact from the commentary corner.
Actually, another thing that I want to say before Neil speaks.
Go on.
I'm joking. Go ahead.
So, here's an interesting one for you, which I think it ties into what Gig was saying about kind of the shaggy plottiness of the whole series, and it's that r.t.d. says,
because it's a very odd series and I love it for its oddness. I genuinely love it for its oddness. It's because this has been done invisibly by people who are out of reach and have made themselves invisible. The whole drama has to treat the families and the blessing and the miracle as invisible. And normally, the normal way of telling this is to cut to, a powerful boardroom full of men in black suits going, ha-ha, the miracle has been successful. The blessing will stay hidden, and all that sort of stuff. And we just sort of said, if you do that, then you're going to make Torchwood and the CIA and the whole world look stupid. It's like the entire drama is actually based around the fact that they can't work out what's going on. And it takes until episode 9 for everyone to be in the right position for them to get the clues. It literally takes that long. If it doesn't take that long, then the whole thing hasn't been believably hidden, which is a very big risk. It's like even now on transmission, people like my sisters are saying to me, like, what's Oswald Dane's up to? And stuff like that. And I sat with my sister last night and he's not actually up to anything. He's a victim of it. And it's very hard to describe this on screen because it's very unusual. Normally these people are involved by plotting. And actually, he's simply an accident of the miracle. And it takes until episode 9 for him to have got the information and to have met Jack and to be aware of Torchwood and to be aware of the whole worldwide situation and to go on the run and to be able to find Gwen Cooper, to go to the house and provide Torchwood the one clue that everyone in the world has missed. The CIA hasn't got the clue, the FBI, Interpol, every news, foreign police agency, anywhere has failed to get the clue. That's how invisible it is. So you need 9 weeks of exposition to get to that point. That's a dangerous little pattern, isn't it? It's like, so it's interesting. It's kind of that first everything. It's a really tricky episode, this, because it all heads towards one great big showdown. They have like a half-hour showdown underground in Shanghai. So the first 30 minutes of the episode is just getting everyone to the right place. I was just thinking this while we had a break, as I was describing earlier on the episode 1 commentary. I was sort of saying that a drama is all about where it starts. Oh, there's my phone. A drama is all about where it starts, and that in a way, the Doctor Who version of this would start around about episodes 9 and 10, where everything's at its climax. And actually, I realised I was wrong in our little break there. The Doctor Who version of this story would start before episode 1. It would be the family preparing to launch Miracle Day, preparing to activate this thing underground in Shanghai, and the consequences will be terrible, and the Doctor arriving and stopping them. And the interesting thing about this is a Torchwood story. It's kind of story of like, this is what happens when the Doctor doesn't turn up.
Yes.
So the whole thing, the reason why they take 10 hours to find out what's going on, because there's no Time Lord, there's no TARDIS, there's no special knowledge, there's no gadgets and gimmickry. It's just a bunch of people and the CIA and the FBI all trying to find out what's going on, and it has to take this long because there's no Time Lord there. So that was an interesting thought I just had today.
Thank you.
It's I keep loving the odd structure of this, even though we're saying this before transmission. I suspect it would have driven people mad. All the exposition at the end.
It's the gap in between.
It's literally bottom heavy. It's like you wait and wait and wait, but everything is answered. I think you do get an answer, but it's the cheekiest format you could have done. You could have met a family operative in episode 8 who told you half of this. You could then have met a character called the cousin, who then gave you another third of the information in episode 9, ready for the final parts of the clue in episode 10. And it's like, this just willfully does the opposite. It just says, it literally says, no one knows what's done this, and that's the rule we're going to stick to all the way through to the end.
And I think so much of the weird shape of the series is really exposed in his, frankly, baffling choice to do that, because all the stuff about, the giant, what to call it? Well, r.t.d. couldn't call it a crack, the blessing in the earth, because
I went through a lot of iterations, the blessing, didn't it? It was a mould originally. Do you remember the
mould, just saying the mould. Well, you wanted it to feel organic, didn't you?
Yes, in the very first storyline draft, it went through the world like, if you could see my hand gesture now, it's making the gesture of a jagged mould, which has to be seen to be believed. And then everyone kept on laughing at me with mould. So I was like, all right, then it won't be mould then. And then we went through, then it was going to be like a black oil, like a slick. But of course, that's in the X-Files, that has black oil and stuff like that. So John Scheiban said we can't do that because he worked on the X-Files. So, and in the end, I quite like it because it became... It's the oddest thing. It's kind of not like anything else. It's kind of a crack that defies physical laws. Then of course, because this had been in development for over a year, then of course Doctor Who came along with its 5th series with a crack in Space and Time. I was sitting there going, oh God, they've got a crack. And it's like, so you'll notice all the dialogue here very carefully avoids the word there. Gwen does the speech going, what is it? That space, that nothingness? Is it the edges? And they are literally avoiding the word crack all the way through. Thank you, Stephen Moffat. I remember watching Series 5 of Doctor Who going, what can we call the blessing now if they've got a crack?
The way that feels adrift from the rest of the series, and that suddenly it's this bizarre terrestrial morphic field bloodline. I do love the wordplay of the first and last titles, the bloodline, of the families, and the line of blood that Jack and Rex make. And of course, in the premiere, the New Worlds America, but also the New Worlds of the Miracle, has transformed society. Anyway, the finale feels so dissatisfying, I think, because it is this completely other story that then he got other writers to kind of do a prequel for, except he then kind of did the finale so separately to it. So the whole shape of the season, I think, is very odd in that it comes from this idea of doing all the stuff before, the drama, and having the drama about characters not understanding what's working on. Because then, where's the satisfaction in all these scenes and all these CIA plots when we know... Well, when it's airing, we don't know the meta plot that r.t.d. says everything has to be hidden until the finale. But I think you can kind of feel it because things just go in circles so much.
I think Children of Earth is a useful comparison here because where that built up very meticulously to its climax in episode 5, what we get here is something that Miracle Day almost feels like it blows its load halfway through with the ovens reveal, because that's the oh my god moment. And in episode 10, with the gigantic sort of, Buenos Aires fault and all the blood shenanigans, doesn't feel quite as, shocking or compelling or interesting because, it's just sci-fi babble at the end of the day. It's less interesting by far.
That revelation that you gave us there, that actually explains so much about what has always felt so weird about Miracle Day, specifically the fact that the ostensible climax of the entire miniseries is basically treated as a subplot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of bizarre how much the kind of concentration camps thing fades into the background once it's there. But one thing I do like is that I really like the element of how they absolutely fail to resist the camps in any meaningful way. I think I've talked about this with Neo, but this whole thing of it gets exposed by Rex and he films Vera burning to death in there. And what we get after that is politicians being like, well, we're just following procedure. We're going to keep the camps open and stuff like that. And I think at one point someone even says they should be shutting these camps down right now, but they're just talking about it. And that is, I think we can see that as not just relevant, but even, prescient. I mean, I say prescient because, stuff was still going on during Obama's run as well, but it's more accurate and on point than r.t.d.'s later treatment of the same topic.
Yes.
Let's just say that.
There's this exchange of lines in episode 9 about what Gig is talking about when Gwen and Jack are talking. And it's when Gwen and Reese are talking. And it's because Reese, in episode 6, was it? He's unwittingly driving people to the modules. Episode 5, he's driving people to the modules, to the ovens, the concentration camps. And then, when he finds out, he's so freaked because, that feels terrible to be complicit in something. And then in episode 9, him and Gwen have a conversation about doing that job knowingly, and they decide to do it because the depression, the economic failure the world is in is so bad that they need the money, and they're so worn down that the conversation they have, Gwen says, "It's funny, isn't it? When they first opened the camps, we all protested. Second time, we're all too busy looking after ourselves." And Reese says, all part of the plan to wear us down. I think that's a lot more fascinating and on point than, some of the stuff in towards the ending of Years and Years, not to spoil it. I thought it was done quite well, kind of in the margins here towards the end of Miracle Day.
Yeah. And of course, Davies barely had anything to do with it at this point.
We should clarify that Russell T Davies was the showrunner of this, but not to the extent of Children of Earth, where he had such a huge hand in all.
He wasn't even really the head writer by the end, was he?
Here, what Russell T Davies did is he wrote the first episode of Miracle Day all by himself. Then for the finale, he told Jane Espenson, who's a very experienced American writer. She's big on the Joss Whedon shows like Buffy and all that. So of course it was huge for Torchwood to get her because Torchwood's so influenced and born of Buffy and everything. Real full circle moment. She was effectively the head writer of this. She was the one rewriting other people's scripts. And for the finale, Davies told her, Jane, told her everything he wanted to happen in it, and she did 2 drafts off that. He said, this is good, and then he took those 2 drafts and he did a few more drafts on top of that, and then that was the finale script. So that was his involvement. Episodes 2 to 9, I mean, he was in the writer's room when they were all breaking them, but he didn't... on Doctor Who, how nearly every script, he would do another draft over and he would improve. He didn't do that here. Jane was the person doing that.
Boy, does it show.
Yeah. And so that's why I think there's so much in episode 10, and it's not so much that episode 10 is bad, it's that it's just on such a different wavelength than the rest of the series. Like there's something I really like in episode 10, and it's when that blonde woman down at the, I can't call it a crack, the Blessing in Shanghai, when Jilly Kitzinger and her are discussing and Gwen is arguing, and they're all arguing about the effects of the miracle and how society's, descended into, totalitarianism, chaos and all that. And she says, when they're talking about inequality that's rife now because of the miracle, that we're just making it official. And there's this concept of the miracle as just exacerbating current issues and inequalities, and how, like in Children of Earth, the world's really, well, at least, English society, Welsh society, American society is quite a bit closer to totalitarianism and that kind of thing than people might think. All that kind of stuff, I think, is a good idea, and it works well. That the whole higher metaphor of the miracle is that even if you were to transform the world so totally, even if life and death were transformed and flipped over and everything, it still doesn't change the fundamental, systems at play in the world, which still need overturning through, the ways we see Gwen blowing up concentration camps and individual action resistance, and that just changing
systems
something
which
so
are
big.
the problem.
Yeah. So I like that idea, but I feel like that idea it's in that conversation in the finale. It's not in as much of the rest of the series as much. This whole idea on, it kind of ties into what r.t.d was saying, where the drama is based around not knowing why. I find that a more interesting systemic idea, that the drama of Miracle Day is, the big system ruining everything isn't, this supernatural switchover of life and death. It's just that the same systems in place that are doing the same problems on a smaller scale, these same inequalities.
Yeah, it's very much Torchwood's wheelhouse, really.
Yeah.
There we go. I was amused by the detail in episode 10 politically when Jilly says, I bet your bleeding liberal heart thinks this, but actually this. She just comes out with a sort of conservative lingo. I thought it was a bit unsubtle.
And of course, one of the main characters literally has a bleeding heart.
Oh yeah, good spot.
I love.
Actually, I don't know that he's. Me too. She's such a fantastic villain. She's so detestable, and the name even. She just has a name that you hate to hear. That's impressive.
Antagonist-wise, it's basically, in terms of good antagonist, it's basically just Jilly, isn't it? Because apart from that, you've got the family's people who are very generic, and you've got Oswald, of course, who is his own kettle of fish entirely.
Friedkin.
Yeah, yeah.
Newman from Seinfeld.
Yeah, you've got all those various people, sort of, and Colin Maloney as well. Yeah, the whole concentration camp thing. But those are kind of like, they're like mid-bosses, like kind of minor temporary sub-antagonists. Yeah, exactly. And maybe, I feel like with Children of Earth, you add Frobisher in that position. And I can't help but think that Frobisher is rather better than anything we get in Miracle Day.
Yeah, if anyone's the Peter Capaldi of Miracle Day, just in terms of casting a good actor who's like surprisingly big for Torchwood to get, it's got to be Bill Pullman. And Oswald Danes, I think, is it's an interesting character, and it's interesting how the different writers handle him. Miraz, I know you believe this, and so do I, but Russell T Davies just gets him so much better than all the other writers. So the premiere and the finale have by far the best Oswald scenes to me, which the first one is the scene that opens Miracle Day is Oswald, getting condemned to death by injection because he's raped and murdered a 10-year-old girl, and he was a school teacher, so one of his students. Absolutely despicable character off the bat. And he's getting injected, and it hurts, and so he's, freaking out and he's flailing around. And this was unscripted. Bill Pullman pulls off like the sides of the tables, and they rip off, and all the extras and everyone are like, what's going on? Because that wasn't planned at all. That was just Bill Pullman struggling so hard, and he's really acting, his heart out of it. And then he doesn't die, and that's how the show starts. Initially, here's another commentary thing. Originally, that was the 9th scene in the episode, and it started with the Rex and Esther phone call. But they decided it's a much more...
That sucked.
It didn't work later, because then you already knew the miracle was in effect, and they decided it worked much better if you move it up, and you just think he's going to die. And then the twist, that's how the miracle starts. Yeah. But his other scene, I think, is really great, is... which one? There's 2 scenes. There's the one where him and Jack are like in a hotel and they have a conversation about each other where it's really about the fact they both killed children. And Jack, what he tries to say to Oswald is that Oswald gets off on, being important. And his whole thing in the series is he's trying to scrape what life he can get and what importance he can get while he can get it. Like in the 2nd episode, he has that conversation with a production assistant about why he's stealing all the food. And, in prison, everyone pissed in his food. And, he knows this isn't going to last, what's going on from him being a free man. So he's eating as much as he can. We get lots of little just notes in, like when he's in hotels, you often notice on his bed, he'll have a load of food. And so he's really trying to do this, hedonistic thing of living as much as he can while he can. Because he knows, essentially death is coming again. And like Jack correctly identifies in him, he's got a death wish because Jack says he's too intelligent to want to keep going on like he is. And that he knows that he's going to die and he wants the execution because he's mindful enough to know. I mean, when he stares into the blessing, which is meant to reflect your soul back at you, he gets freaked out because of the weight of all his sin flashing at him. And so he's this interesting character in that he's a terribly evil man, but he's not stupid enough or not insane enough to not recognize, how terrible he is and how much he needs execution. But the scene I like is at the very end, when his response to Jack saying, you are nothing, you're one of so many men like this that nobody remembers because you are so utterly pathetic. And this is why I like that his performance isn't scary, it's sleazy. Do you know what I mean? He's not menacing. He feels more like a used car salesman, how he talks. He's very sleazy, but pathetic and wormy. He's like, these serial killers. These serial killers, you see people, form all these cults around and that, and then you watch the actual interviews of them and they're just so wormy and weedy and, disgusting and pathetic and small. And so then his ending, of course, has to be him trying to make himself the center of the action, him trying to do a huge action, and him making himself big again.
I like the fact Oswald sees himself as so small, the final line of the scene, because there's a danger with this sort of storytelling that you introduce a murderous paedophile who is, was a terrible man. And a man like that in real life has all sorts of problems, but this man exalts himself.
They fear you.
And, sometimes, because it's Bill Pullman, because it's a thriller, because there's star power at work here and artificial dynamics, thrillers have dynamics at work that don't exist in real life. So there's a danger sometimes he can look epic, It's like his crimes and his evil, if you want to call it evil, become epic. And so that's why I had to get this scene in, because and actually, strangely, he's about, in a perverse way, he's about to start saving the day. I love the perversity of that the bad man does good things in the end. But it wouldn't work without this scene where that's why all 10 episodes I was starting to write this scene where it's like someone has to tell him he's nothing. Because I think he gets off on considered to be, the way in episode 1 he looks at that camera when he's in court, like he's important. Do you know, like he has status, like he's got something to say about the world. And actually, and what he did was huge and terrible and dreadful. But that doesn't make you an epic character, No. And I love Jack just telling him in the history of the world he's a tiny little piece of dirt.
Yes. And it's interesting because we always talk during the storylining that the bad man would do a good thing at the end of this episode. It doesn't feel like that to me because it feels better. It feels like he's been true to his dark character because he's doing it to be the centre of things again.
Yes, and his last lines are so perverse. Oh,
it's the darkest last lines in television drama.
That is the darkest thing I've ever written in my life. And I remember John Scheiban watching that and laughing at how outrageous it is. I mean, it's monstrous. We shouldn't laugh.
He is monstrous, but I think it's important because what you're not signalling, we're not saying, oh, look, the paedophile has repented, which would be monstrous. And,
God.
Impossible and terrible drama and untruthful drama.
Which is, his death taking control of the whole thing and saving people and making himself important in the narrative again. I thought that was really interesting how they played that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna disagree. I think that was a horrible decision. I think it worked for the character. It worked for the character, but I think it was fucking stupid because basically I have a lot of issues with Oswald, right? Primarily it's the fact that they essentially made him not likable, but he had so much focus.
He's the anti-hero.
Yeah, essentially. And I didn't like how that was framed. I didn't like anything about it. And primarily, I think it comes down to, why did they make him a paedophile? That's what I can't get over. I can't work it out because there is zero, aside from making you dislike him from the start and think he's a monster, there is zero story justification for him being a paedophile. And it'd be one thing if he just was, I guess, but it's the fact that, the scene at the end of episode 3, you referred to it there, the Jack and Oswald are talking and they're basically talking about having killed a child. What you need to remember about Miracle Day is that for a lot of people, this was their first ever introduction to Torchwood. That scene, and at no point in the series, but specifically in that scene, they never actually tell you what Jack did in Children of Earth, which is killing his grandson, or obviously why he did it. but specifically his sin was killing a child. And it was also in completely different circumstances from Oswald, but the whole point of that scene is like, Oswald essentially tries to insinuate that they are somehow the same, because he can tell that also the way that Jack is speaking and talking about, you know, you never feel forgiven and all that stuff. You know, Jack knows because he's talking from his own experience having killed his grandson. But the problem is, the scene, I'm not sure how you would have worked it in, but the scene in the series never tell you that's what Jack did. So when Oswald is standing there saying, we're just the same, essentially, what the fuck are you meant to take away from that when one of them is a fucking paedophile? Like, that is... Obviously, we know that Jack is not, and we know what they're talking about and who Jack has killed and what he did, but I can't help thinking of all the people who are watching this and they don't have that context, because there's plenty of them, and it's never dealt with, it's never acknowledged the fact that this exchange happens, and it has this unfortunate implication if you don't have the knowledge of Children of Earth. So that's why I feel like, why did Oswald have to be a paedophile? It'd be one thing if it was a child murderer, because then not that I'm saying that's any less horrible, but it does take it to another level when you're talking about, you know, so you could have that scene be exactly the same. Nothing would change about the series at all if Oswald just wasn't a paedophile, because he would still be a monster. You'd still hate him. It's just that scene wouldn't then be framed in a horrible way for Jack. Also, I hate that it's established, specifically in that scene yet again, that what Oswald ultimately wants is death. So at the end of the series, he gets what he wants, and he's framed as a hero. And whether you take it as a sort of, oh, he's trying to put himself in the middle of the action and stuff, he ultimately does a sort of heroic action. He saves Gwen from the woman who tried to grab her. He sacrifices himself, you know, and to blow everything up, etc. He has a hero's death. Why are they giving a paedophile murderer a hero's death?
While screaming about how he's going after all the bad little girls, too.
Yeah, oh my god, that was so horrible. Like, it's so uncomfortable, it's so bad. I cannot understand.
Well, that's the drama of it, is what he's saying as he's performing ostensibly a hero's moment. That's, you know, the Daviesness of it, is the collision of what you're feeling there.
But it's not good. It's not comfortable. It's not enjoyable. I get that obviously if this was like a sort of a real world situation, you might have that happening. But we're not talking about that. And for a series that ostensibly claims to be about social commentary, rewarding the paedophile at the end is not the way. Like, what are they trying to say there? What is the point being made? The paedophile gets everything he wanted, and he gets a hero's death. Like, what is that? After they spent the whole series building him up to be some sort of anti-hero. I just think it was a bad decision. Horrible.
In terms of writing him as a pedophile, that just seemed very much to me commentary on how, you know, pedophiles can rise to such media prominence in America. Like, this is far from the first time a pedophile has somehow crazily, you know, risen to such media heights. But my problem with that subplot is you look at how he's built up what he's saying, and he's doing things that would obviously get him media attention and media love. Like when he's the only person really in the series to go to the category ones and really directly and in very explicit terms sympathize with their specific plights in episode 2 or 3, I think it is, when he holds up the baby and when he's talking about their lived experience. He's the only one in the series that really drills down on what they're feeling and what is... he's not treating them as objects. He's uniquely treating them as people. And, you know, obviously it's him just talking this up. He doesn't care. He's not an empathetic person. But you can see why this media narrative forms around him. And I think that goes interestingly for maybe the first 5 episodes. But then it's just so... it's so off screen, like why his media empire falls. And, you know, I don't think we ever get the dots dotted enough to see specifically why he rose in the first place. Like, there's a couple of set pieces I buy, like the ending of episode 5 and that baby moment, but we never get enough of it to... Yeah. I think you needed to sell the story more, and I can totally buy the story. And, you know, as commentary on how people that despicable, you know, and he's sort of a quasi-religious figure, and how those kind of quasi-religious pedophiles can raise to such prominence. That Davies can write that well, but he's not the one writing, you know, in these episodes in the middle. And so it definitely falls apart towards the end.
Oswald, the problem I have with him as well is that, and this is an issue with Miracle Day on the whole, and its plot and how, you know, how there's so much of it that you could cut out. Oswald, you could cut him out. He has... what does he actually contribute to the resolution of the final plot? And I get that Miracle Day isn't about the final plot in a sense. It's all about the everything that happens before it, so he doesn't have to tie in. But I just feel like he's such a... I don't enjoy his scenes. I don't think they tell us anything particularly fascinating, aside from going, yeah, bad people sometimes get to rise up in society. Yeah, like he doesn't tell us anything we don't already know. He's not, and he's not making commentary on it. That's the thing. He's just sort of there, following a narrative we've seen in the world before, and I don't know. I don't like him.
That's the same thing Children of Earth is doing. It's telling a narrative we're already aware of. I think as social commentary, it's written poorly, but I don't think it's a bad idea to be writing this.
That's the thing. But that was all sort of... It all was relevant to the plot as well. Yeah, it was good, and it was relevant to the plot because that social commentary was just naturally built into the plot of Children of Earth. Oswald Danes was just a thing that existed in addition to the plot.
It's funny because in the middle episodes he's so utterly stranded from the narrative, isn't he? He only really has scenes with Jilly. Like, he's so disconnected. And r.t.d. said this, that he was thinking originally about giving Oswald scenes where he kind of clued into the three families earlier, but then he abandoned it because he wanted to do his thing of just putting everything in the finale. So you've got this character, that's got his own kind of disconnected subplot that I would argue is doing interesting stuff, or at least attempting to do interesting stuff, but it's so disconnected from, I guess, if you call it the core narrative, but Miracle Day is so disparate. Like, Jack is stranded for multiple episodes in the middle, and he's not really doing anything important. This is a really shoddily plotted season, and that, we have all these subplots and characters that kind of tie into the concept, but they're not connecting right, and they're not cohering into a season. So I absolutely
It's like vignettes.
Yeah.
Do you think that if Oswald had been played by a shittier actor, you would still think positively about his inclusion in the series?
Well, I don't think that's the right terms. I think the idea of what he was trying to do interests me. Like, just on the page before an actor gets there, the ending of episode 5, when he's reframing the miracle as like the second great leap forward, and it's this kind of spiritual reawakening of humanity as, the next step in evolution, and how we can sell this to people, when the reality is everyone is still aging and everyone's still going to, well, not die, they're going to expire horribly in pain. If everyone's still aging, there's no point to the miracle in the first place. Because, when people are 150, that's no kind of existence.
It'll be like Dobby Doctor in Last of the Time Lords, basically.
Yeah. This is what the series should have done more on, comment on the elderly and, the decrepit and all this kind of stuff. All that kind of stuff just on the page, I think, is interesting, what Oswald's doing. And the idea of a pedophile as this religious media figure that rises so much in American times of crises, that all works for me on the page. If it wasn't Bill Pullman, like, it barely works now. Most of it doesn't work. Some of it works to me. If it wasn't Bill Pullman, I don't think, this would be working at all. He's tremendous. When he gets the Davies material, especially, he knows when to chew the scenery to an insane extent, and he knows when just to do the used car salesman thing. And I'm so glad he didn't try to make the role scary. I think that's such a better point for the character. But Bill Pullman pulls so much of the weight here, Code. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's true of a lot of the things that he's in. He's really a versatile actor.
I think with Oswald's presence in the show that's kind of r.t.d's morbid fascination and desire to shock, and I think this fascination with the idea of someone who is damned. I think maybe r.t.d sort of racked his brain and be like, what sort of character would be the most damned and completely like unsalvageable, irredeemable, and death wish essentially, and that's how you get to, not only has he murdered a child, but he's also a paedophile, and he's gonna sort of tauntingly mock his victims as he blows himself up and gets this big kind of this fiery inferno of a death. It's also, I think part of it is the idea of depicting an existence and a life that is just so utterly fucked, and a story that's just so completely messed up. It's kind of cynical shock value in one sense, and I don't think r.t.d is above that particularly. But I think nonetheless, that scene where he blows himself up and he's like, straight to hell and I'm following, and he's sort of chewing the scenery and sort of screaming, and the music is going, and it's all very flashy and in your face, and so like, I find that entertaining. Like, that's one of the bits in the finale that entertain.
He falls, like you're saying, that kind of character. I think Vivian Rook in Years and Years, and maybe John Sims' Master in Doctor Who, are very much, this type of character r.t.d likes, that kind of rise terribly, in these times of crises, and then it just utterly...
Trickster, man.
trickster men. These terrible souls. It's definitely a thing he likes writing, but even the Death Wish, there's so much of Oswald's character I don't feel like was cohering, and it just, like Code was saying, when in all these middle episodes, it's just not working. No matter the actor you throw at it.
I'm just really annoyed about the end of episode 3.
You know a character we can all agree on liking together though, very much so, is got to be
the end.
Rex Matheson.
We'll say Rex. Rex, I actually I don't have that much of a problem with him. Rex is it's interesting because Rex and everyone in the show was saying Esther. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
In America, anyway.
Rex and Esther are very much, Owen and Tosh in series 1 and 2, original Torchwood, are very much these kind of, on the page, they're these stock characters, Tosh, techie person, in the crime lab that, is on the phone to them and saying, oh, you got to go to coordinates, blah, 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 I'm going to hack into the mainframe. She's that person. And Owen is the secondary, male lead that's angsty and, he'll argue with a boss. But those two actors, especially Bern Gorman, they don't make those characters feel stocky, even though that's so clearly their position and narrative roles in the episodes. Bern Gorman plays that role with such a weird masculinity that he doesn't feel like that at all. He feels like this original kind of character. Even before Series 2 and his whole death arc, he feels original and different than... If you actually just read the scripts, I think Owen would feel so much more boring. And Naoko for Tosh just enlivens her so much, and she puts so much humanity and interesting energy into the role that she doesn't feel rote, even though, as written, that role is way too rote so much at the time, especially for an actress like her. But then we get to Rex and Esther, and it's like, they're super, super stock characters. You can't get more stock than this. We've got, he's a brilliant, detective, or an agent in this case, but, he doesn't play by the rules enough, and he's too arrogant. And then we've got his meek girl assistant, and she's, maybe got a crush on him and something, but she's too quiet in the office and all that. These are super stock roles. But okay, Torchwood can surmount that. Rex, he kind of does at times. I think the actor totally gets the role he's playing, and he knows how to kind of escalate it off Barrowman and stuff to make the role kind of work. Esther's actor... I forget her dialogue as she says it. I find her that, dreary to me. She doesn't do anything with the stereotype or the stock role she's given at all to me.
Remember all that shit about Esther's sister and her sister's 2 children? We constantly get Esther calling up her sister and reporting her sister to the feds. I thought that was hilarious for a scene of where, a white woman calls the cops and it backfires in her face. That was ironic. But yeah, apart from that, there's so much. And Esther has so much material where she's just being useless. And she gets all the scenes where she's fucking up, and I think maybe they wanted her to be the American version of Gwen, almost, who starts as a total ingenue and then ends up as the confident, badass or whatever, but it doesn't work.
She really did nail being sad and unhappy and upset about a lot of things.
That's how I felt watching Miracle Day.
Yeah. But she's, as a hero, she leaves something to be desired.
Code, you said on rewatch that you basically just felt like skipping the scenes with these American original characters. So, what's your assessment of Rex and Esther?
Esther, I feel like, exactly what you said, she's kind of on her own. The whole sister plot just goes nowhere and means nothing. I don't care about it, and I never cared about it even when I was watching it. I assumed that it maybe was going to go somewhere, but it didn't, so it was they were trying to go like that. Oh, she totally has a backstory, guys, and a personality. Look, she cares about her sister. Esther was just boring, but I liked some scenes she had. She was good, and when Jack or Gwen, specifically Gwen, was sort of interacting with her. I remember specifically I like the scene in episode 3 when they're walking down the street, and Gwen's talking to her and comforting her and stuff. That was a really lovely scene, but I love it because of Gwen, not because of Esther. Esther was just there to sort of stand and be sad, so that Gwen could, it was a good character moment for her. And then Rex, I thought he was really well acted. I don't necessarily have an issue with the character in a sense. I find he's quite bland as well, but mostly because he has that idea it's something that's been done before, and the show doesn't really do anything to subvert it. So he suffers from that problem, same as Esther. But he was well acted, and you know, I liked in a sense that there was someone to rub Jack up the wrong way, and I don't.
Me and Neo both immediately.
Get your minds out the gutter, please.
Jack started it. All those comments he makes to Rex.
True, but I thought that was interesting, but because he was fulfilling that role, he wasn't likable, and he was very rude to Esther and everything, and I felt like I struggled to like him, and it didn't help that he kept making like the low-key homophobic comments towards Jack, and that's why they sort of butt heads so much, and Jack's making all those funny comments at him, and it's because, and you know, it also, like, Rex isn't legitimately, like, you know, I think it would be more clear if he was, but he's clearly got some sort of level of discomfort for you know, for Jack, and that aspect of him. So having that
he's in love with
was
it.
just.
See, just, me and Neo, we're both Jack's shippers.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah. Jack's forever, actually. But no, I just thought that Rex, it didn't endear me to him at all, and I probably might have been more tolerant of him if it wasn't for comments like that.
If he was more tolerant, you would have been more tolerant of him.
Yes.
It's really intolerant of you.
It was good to sort of have those comments because Jack's response to them were just fucking hilarious. Like I really like that. But when you're trying to frame Rex as he's essentially a new member of the team and you're meant to care about him, especially how the finale ends, where he's now immortal, apparently, that just feels like it doesn't make me like him at all, and it does frustrate me that the character. Obviously, not that I would be happy if it was Esther, because Esther was boring, but like, why'd you have to reward the homophobic character with immortality? Like,
I'm just glad it wasn't
that?
Oswald.
Oh,
I think there is.
God.
I think there is a little bit of an interesting subtext with Rex becoming immortal, basically getting the same condition as Jack from a blood transfusion.
Yes,
like there's
big time.
Oh yeah, are we going to go into it?
I don't want to just parallel here, but yeah, there is that sense of like he's been turned to Jack's side, and it's kind of ironic that he of all people ends up getting that. You know, after he's been the one who's been so shady to Jack.
I'm going to do some parroting here, and it's of Russell T Davies. And this is, you know the great feeling when you have a take on an episode, or you have a headcanon and you have a reading, and then suddenly you happen upon a comment by the writer and it's like affirming everything you always thought, which wasn't always like a dominant reading.
Yes.
I got this exact moment listening to the commentary for the finale, because I've always just... Okay, I won't lead with me. I'll just lead with what he said. So, Russell T Davies says of that ending with Jack and Rex,
it's a different form of immortality to Jack's. This is blessing supported. Jack is a fixed point in time and space. Was Jack ever mortal? That's what we'll never know. Because I think, by the way, that, you know, he was a fixed point in time and space. I'm not sure he was ever mortal during the whole story. Just we never got to prove it because we never killed him. That's thrown you.
Oh my God, faithful viewer! I'm. This is going to be much discussed at the Chinese restaurant this evening.
If the doctor says someone's a fixed point in time and space, they're a fixed point in time and space.
I am horrified. And frankly, my head hurts. Faithful viewer, thank you for spending time with me. I'm now going to go and kill Russell T Davies at the Chinese restaurant.
Thank you, faithful viewer, for watching. Will we come back ever again? We don't know.
I hope so. Bye.
Bye-bye.
and that's how the last commentary for Torchwood ends.
Well, that's quite fascinating.
Rex's immortality, I think, and I know a lot of fans have this reading, is that it's probably reliant on Jack's blood in him to some degree, and that eventually, you know, when the body recycles and flushes all the blood, he might lose it at that point when all his blood is 100% Rex's. Or that it's just the Earth's blessing, Morphic fields is, you know, Russell calls it a blessing supported immortality, so it's something separate from Jack's, obviously. But I particularly love this idea that kind of the whole concept of the show was never really, it wasn't going on what we thought was going on, and that Jack was quite possibly immortal the whole time, and he just got some boo-boos on his arm, you know, like Reese made fun of him, and that was, you know, the totality of the issues for him.
Jack in episode 7 calls himself fixed point of time.
Here we go.
80 years before the doctor tells him he is. What's that? Please explain.
Also, he has his World War II coats before
World War II.
Well, what you
This
have
makes
to
sense.
keep in mind is that this is actually Jack from in the future post Miracle Day. It has nothing to do. It's not a flashback.
Yeah, it's annoying that the script clearly isn't writing for that, but that's the only way to really make it work. Because
No,
it's just,
I
this is
refuse.
how you can tell Russell T Davies isn't hands-on showrunning the season, because he would absolutely catch a continuity point like that. Glancing over a script, he'd see fixed point, a term that he came up with in the Fires of Pompeii, and he'd go, "Hey, Jack can't know this. This isn't, in season 2 of Torchwood. Jack doesn't know this yet. We're back in the 1920s." But it's just endemic of the kind of sloppiness of Miracle Day. And like a lot of these writers are good that are working on it, but this is a Russell T Davies show, and much like series 1 and 2 of Torchwood, there's not that much Russell T Davies happening, and that's a problem.
Have we really gone into what was going on that kept him out of Miracle Day? This was around the time that his partner was dying of cancer.
Yeah, and that's why after... So the idea was with Stars, so it was co-production BBC and Stars. After the big success of David Tennant's Doctor Who, hugely successful, after all that, the BBC sent out Russell T Davies and producers Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter to America to make some co-productions and, make the BBC look really sexy and wonderful and huge because they'd done such a good job on Doctor Who. Torchwood was meant to be the stepping stone, so they were going to do 1 or 2 seasons or more with Stars. That's why, the Bloodline, the Miracle Day finale ends on such a huge cliffhanger with, Rex becoming immortal, because they thought they were probably going to do another season. But yeah, like Miri says, r.t.d's partner, eventual husband, got really sick, and so he went back to the UK not long after Miracle Day ended. The other 2 stayed in America for a while, I think. Julie worked on Da Vinci's Demons, that show. I'm pretty sure they're back in the UK now. They're both working on his Dark Materials adaptation that I think's out in December. But yeah, that's the sum of things, as he was saying. With that Rex skepticism about whether people just knowing about concentration camps is enough to stop them or anything, I think Miracle Day handles some of the ideas years and years, which we also did 6 podcasts on, did a little better. The idea of a comfy society descending into totalitarianism, like by a hair's width. Like he says in The Writer's Tale, this is an idea he's long been obsessed with. And he acts like he was saving it for one show, but really it's, it's in Children of Earth, it's in Miracle Day, it's in Years and Years. I'm sure it crops up in some of his other work as well. So he's very much...
It's in Doctor Who a few times.
Yeah.
Miracle Day is probably the most escalated form of it, isn't it? Because we get we get the time skip, we get the global depression, and we get, this total, martial law rule and stuff like that, and everything just going to hell, basically. Whereas in both Children of Earth, it's somewhat truncated, takes place within 5 days, and in Years and Years, we get that. So, yeah, Miracle Day is almost like the biggest r.t.d. ever goes with that idea. Well, excepting Doctor Who, of course.
Yeah, Turn Left and,
Not even Turn... I was thinking of Last of the Time Lords, specifically.
That too, yeah.
But yeah, Turn Left does it too, doesn't it? Yeah, oh gosh.
God, if he had nuked Shanghai at the end of Miracle Day, that would have just been an even further... God, I'm so upset that you told me that.
Do you know what I mean? It feels kind of off to me that he would kill Shanghai instead of, Cardiff. I don't know, there's just something about when it's not, the country you're writing in or the country...
Yeah, it's weird.
If it was LA, I'd feel like it was less weird, because at least most of Miracle Day was in America, but just randomly going to Shanghai and blowing it up is... Yeah, it feels
treating a foreign city as a disposable commodity is very... Yeah. You know what? It's very American, but it's also very British. We get it from them.
It reminds me of that lady in Shanghai who talks to Gwen in the finale and basically just says things like, "Door bad, many ghosts, oh, sad girl," and sort of provides mystic, Asian wisdom to Gwen. It's kind of Orientalist and just weird. What were they thinking with that?
Can we talk about Jack? I want to talk about Jack. I like Jack.
I want to talk about Rex.
Okay. We're going to talk about Jack. So obviously we have series 1, 2 and 3 of Torchwood, developing Jack, building them up into this sort of a version different than we'd seen in Doctor Who. Basically, the sort of cultural consciousness when it comes to Jack is people have this perception of him that he's this sort of... They break him down to his base elements, which is he flirts with everyone and sleeps with everyone and all this stuff, and that's essentially when you see anyone talk about Jack, that's basically it. And that is part of him. That's fine, obviously. But I feel it's kind of people who view him like that, I tend to think have only watched Doctor Who, because when we come back to it, he's a sort of more serious character in Torchwood, and he has more depth to him. Miracle D seems to almost, I'm gonna like talk about this, but I have to make it absolutely completely clear that when I'm talking about this, I am talking about Jack as a character, and in no way am I trying to make a moral judgment or any sort of judgment on anyone, because this is specifically about Jack, and I certainly don't have any negative opinions about anyone, okay, who has, you know...
All that
okay,
stuff's getting cut.
Fuck you. But I do have to make that super clear, because I think it's almost something like you never talk about, because you don't want it to come across like you are trying to judge anyone.
You made yourself very clear. You're not making a condemnation. You're contextualizing it for Jack.
Exactly. For Jack specifically. Okay. So before Torchwood Series 1 and 2, we do have this perception of Jack as a sort of like he has also like a sort of playboy sort of type. That sort of
martinis in his ship on the Empty Child.
Yeah,
when he talks to Rose in there.
Fun Jack.
Yeah, fun Jack, overly flirty sort of Jack is an aspect that only John could do so well, and not have it come across as like too much or whatever. So that's absolutely, I love Doctor Who Jack. But as he goes into Torchwood, and as things sort of focus on him specifically as a character, you see a more serious side of him. And I notice, interesting enough, especially within those first two series, but specifically when we get into like series 2 and Children of Earth, you don't really have that aspect of him. And well, you do, but it's not in the same way that you see it in Doctor Who. He's not like sort of flirting with everyone that's around him. And I would argue that probably for Jack, series 2 was like his happiest time. Not when Owen died, but you know, the sort of
and reset.
Yeah, but even after Owen's sort of story is dealt with, and has you know, when you look at things like Something Borrowed, you know, because also that's after the Owen arc, but Owen sort of made peace with himself, and so everything before and after, like excluding Exit Wounds, you know, before and after the Owen death arc is probably like Jack's a good place. He's got his Torchwood family, everything's good. He's with Yanto, everything is nice, and I feel like you just don't see that aspect of him where he's like he's indulging himself, I guess. And I mean this specifically also to things like alcohol, because in Torchwood, we've just discussed this before, like there's a thing in Torchwood where essentially if you see Jack drinking alcohol is a shorthand for him being sad. That's basically how you should take it, because that's how it's intended.
You can use the commentary corner for this to talk about Jack's alcohol thing.
I'm sitting in the commentary corner. Okay, so when in the commentary for Series 1, Captain Jack Harkness, John Barrowman talks about how initially in the Series 1, Episode 1, there was going to be a line from Jack about how he only drinks water, but that was cut from the final transmission, But John says that, and I sort of disagree with this, with what he's saying, but I also get what he's saying. So he says that essentially that because that line was cut, it doesn't make it as significant the few times you do see him drinking alcohol, which I disagree with, because obviously you do. If you notice it, then it is very clear. So because obviously in other scenes, any scenes, even if they're out sort of celebrating, like they're with the team, they're at a bar or whatever, Jack will always be drinking water, you know. But the few scenes where he is sad, and for example in Captain Jack Harkness, he goes to his office and he has a drink at the end and stuff, it seems like that he's drinking alcohol, and so it is ultimately a shorthand for Jack is sad if you see him drinking alcohol, and that's why, for example,
in those moments when he's sad, he's what us fans of Chibnall would call a martini sipper.
Shut up.
I mean, it's the same thing in the Doctor Dances too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or not only he's drinking because he thinks he's about to die, but he also reveals that he got drunk with his executioners. So that is how he's always approached death.
Basically, I feel like the sort of part of Jack that is very hedonistic, that is very indulgent, and the part of him that's very indulgent and sort of very much into physical pleasures, and that's including alcohol and sex. I feel like with his development in Torchwood, these are aspects of him that he doesn't really indulge in when he's happy. In series 1 and series 2, well, less so series 1, I'd say series 2, because that's when he's the most comfortable. His sort of secret about being immortal is out, and, you know, he's with Yanto and everything's good. So Jack is in a sort of committed relationship with Yanto. He doesn't drink, he doesn't, you know, all that stuff. He doesn't indulge in that sort of aspect of himself that is popularly considered to be a core part of Jack. And certainly it can be, and I think sort of in his younger years it was, you know, so I'm not saying like it is like absolutely any time he acts like this he is sad, but in the context of Torchwood again. So basically what I'm trying to say is that sort of Doctor Who personality thing, or is considered a core part of him, but in Torchwood, when you really think about it, it is not. So it is fascinating that when you get to Miracle Day, it seems almost like a character regression, because he goes from obviously from a sort of committed relationship and not drinking, and certainly never getting drunk while he's on missions essentially, to actively going out to a bar, getting almost blackout drunk, and, you know, having sex with a stranger and everything, which, again, I have to make it so clear that there's nothing wrong with this, okay? Like, I cannot stress that enough. Anyway, but for Jack, this is also, like, different from how he'd been acting, like, in series 2 and series 1 and everything. He's indulged in this sort of, this hedonism, because, as what I would say is a sort of coping mechanism. I think that this is made even more clear by the fact that he has the phone call with Gwen, and he's basically lying in bed, alcohol on the nightstand next to him, and he's crying. He's basically crying down the phone to Gwen, essentially begging her to sort of reassure him that she is there for him and that he's not completely alone and everything, because obviously coming off of Children on Earth, and we've talked about this in the Series 3 podcast, losing Yanto, like, was obviously, it was horrible for him. It was like, it sort of was the sort of thing that pushed him to leave Earth and everything. So, and I think it's so significant as well that Yanto gets a mention in that scene, and the Miracle Day scene, because it brings you back to the fact that Jack is not happy. In all of Miracle Day, Jack is not happy.
Much like the audience.
Yeah, much like the audience. So having these scenes of seeing him, like, essentially regress and in terms of his development, and sort of almost go back to sort of immature Doctor Who sort of personality. Yeah. Because
with Alonso.
Like, yeah.
I mean, the regression started with Alonso, didn't it? End of time. You know, he was shagging Alonso at the bar.
But that's like a post Children of Earth. That's essentially post Children of Earth. That's what Jack is like. He's fucking miserable, and he's sort of indulging himself to sort of shut out the pain, I guess. And like I said, like you say in the sort of end of time scene, with at a bar drinking alcohol, and then Alonso comes along and everything. And I think with Jack, so much of his sort of character is almost false. It's very put on. What was I reading? I was reading not that it's super relevant. I was reading a novel, one of the Torchwood novels last night, and interesting enough, it did. It was actually written by James Goss, I think, who ended up essentially show running the for series
show in quotation marks.
audio runner for series 5 and 6. Yeah, it was a novel by him, and there's like just brief references to it where Jack is essentially in a very bad situation, and he's just come back to life and he's not feeling good, but there's a line where essentially he says that he's relying on his backup personality, which is when he turns on the charm and jokes around and everything. And but in the context of the novel, that's not how he's really feeling. He's just sort of, you know, it's a front almost. And I feel like a lot of Jack in general is a front, which is, you know, I think that applies for his Doctor Who characterization as well. It is a front that is, in a sense, it's not truly him.
Even just physically, a lot of Jack is the front.
What do you mean?
Is that a penis joke?
Was that a joke? Or
Open to interpretation.
Okay.
Classic
we'll let
cop-out.
the viewers decide. Yeah, we'll let the viewers decide what he means to that. But
Because I would have said that, in fact, a lot of what Jack prefers to focus on is the rift, the crack, if you will.
That is a superior joke.
It's getting very crude, isn't it, all of a sudden? It's all getting quite sordid.
Well, it's going to get
we're
worse.
talking about Jack.
These are backup personalities in response to what Code's saying.
It's a coping mechanism. But yeah, so I think Jack, he puts on this front, and he isn't sort of, a lot of the time when he is being jokey, especially post Children of Earth, there is an element to it that's very false.
Yeah.
Because we know he's secretly miserable. And I think even it can be extended back to also series 1 of Torchwood and everything. He does have that sort of, because he's got that air of mystery, especially back then. Nobody in the team really knows him. He does have that sort of, nobody really understands him. He's just got this sort of, you know, all this charm and everything, but nobody knows the actual depth of him, which I think is he's so fascinating as character. And I think
Yanto knew the depth of it.
Thanks.
See, that
yeah,
was...
he did.
I see what you mean. I think you're right.
Miracle Day makes it very, very clear, as in puts it in the text that we are meant to make this comparison. In episode 7, so he's talking about the Doctor, telling Angelo about the Doctor and how the Doctor had a companion and everything. And in that conversation, Jack frames himself as the Doctor, and then Angelo asks, or whatever, wants to be his companion. So I really love that episode 7 made it so clear, because it's something you should be aware of by this point anyway, that Jack is a Doctor mirror / parallel, but to have it spelled out for you is so good and so fun. And I just thought, you know, it was fascinating for me especially, but it's a lot of the things when it is like the sort of putting on a front to hide the secret loneliness is very much of a Doctor thing to do.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's just so to have that aspect of Jack is really fascinating, and having it sort of in comparison to a character we know very well. The scene where they actually arrive at the field place where Jack's gonna be killed, and Gwen asks him, you know, what's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, and he has that anecdote about the Firebird and how it's like it's so bright and so beautiful, and it only lasts for like 2 seconds, like a few seconds or whatever, but once it dies and fades, you've still got the sort of imprint of it, like, because it was so bright. Big metaphor for people that Jack loves. Just saying. Anyway.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Even the show itself, I'm not even like trying to be funny here, but I think that kind of metaphor works for things like the media, like the show in general, and that, because what Jack says is it burns so brightly that even when it dies, it's imprinted on your retinas, you know, longer than it ever lived. Like we're discussing this season like 8 years later. So I think it's a really beautiful metaphor applicable to a few things.
Yes, Miracle Day will truly live forever in our hearts, even if it didn't make the slightest cultural imprint.
It will never die.
Yes, it's our hearts.
Miracle Day, for all its flaws, was really, really good to Jack and developing him, and it made so much sense coming off the back of Children of Earth, because I was so scared to start watching Miracle Day, because I was terrified that they would regress him, but not in a way that was intentional or significant, but every way that he did sort of regress, and like in the sense that he becomes more guarded and he sort of goes back to acting how he was prior to sort of that time of happiness in series 2 and everything, that all stuff, it just feels intentional. It just feels the natural progression for Jack. So yeah, I really love that.
There's one bit where I feel that kind of more serious and darker Jack kind of flashes back, which is when he's tied up in the car with Gwen. You get that amazing conversation between the two of them, where which is also a brilliant scene for Gwen, of course. And Gwen, I think, gets lots of good stuff in Miracle Day. But I love that scene where Gwen kind of talks about how she started to love it with Torchwood, and how even when people died, even when they lost people, it made her in this twisted way feel, you know, more special, like she was the survivor. And that's so deliciously ridiculously fucked up. I love that. And then when she tells Jack that she's willing to see him killed like a dog if it means protecting her daughter, Jack fires back and saying that, I'll rip the skin from your bones, right, before I'll let go of, what I have now that I'm mortal. And and also earlier on we see him try to trick Gwen into untying him as well. So it's like that. It's so interesting to see that the dark sides of those two characters kind of coming together, because we've barely ever seen that in the past episodes. Like, it's such a good scene, and that's really the point at which, like, it really crystallizes how well Miracle Day actually moves the characters forward from Children of Earth, because it could have just not done that. It could have just had them get on really well the whole time, but this is the point where it's actually operating on the high level.
Oh God, I love everything they did with the sort of original Torchwood cast when it came to character development, which is why obviously I would never write Miracle Day off completely, because I feel like it was such a necessary sort of point. Like, if you were going to continue the series, which they did, series 5, series 6, big finish. I felt like you needed something that made sense of Children of Earth.
On the character of Gwen, and going back to that scene you were talking about when Jack is drunk and calling up Gwen and talking about Yanto and stuff.
Oh, yes.
The really interesting thing there is that she hangs up on him, not even that intentionally, but because her family calls and she's talking to them.
Yeah.
And Jack's whole appeal to her is, we're still the, dynamic duo, we're still the team and together and for each other and everything. And what he's having to cope with now is that, and it's that same conversation in the car about ripping skins off skulls and that, is that Jack is having to cope with the fact that, he left and Gwen now has higher priorities than him, which are her family, which are Anwen and Reese. And this interesting thing for Jack is how, like you're saying, he's so utterly alone now, and this is why he's in a much more depressive state, no Yanto and stuff. And killing Stephen Lyons in Years and Years, my mistake, killing Stephen, what even is his surname in Children of Earth? Stephen whatever, Harkness in Children of Earth has obviously, had such a huge impact on him. It's why he left Earth in the first place. Yeah. So Gwen has got this interesting character movement forward where Jack is moving backward in an interesting way.
Yes.
Although the really interesting thing with Gwen is that in a way she's regressing as well. That's why she has that lovely monologue in the car where she's talking about, as far back as the first episode, she knew Torchwood was toxic and dangerous, and it endangers her family and herself, and, it's an unwise idea for all these reasons. But, and this is a really interesting non-Doctor Who-y thing, she doesn't just like being part of Torchwood to save the world or whatever. She likes doing it because, okay, I'm gonna refrain from comparing to Oswald. That's gonna go down badly. But she says it makes her feel important. And it's exciting.
I mean, Clara did say that 12 made her feel special. I don't think that comparison is unfounded.
Let's talk about Clara, not Oswald. Yeah, it makes her feel important.
Oh, God. I thought you meant Clara Oswald. I'm so stupid.
It's okay. It's okay, Gig.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay, Gig. None of us remember Miracle Day anyways.
So, I think that's really interesting for Gwen, and that she's aware of the kind of regressiveness of being part of Torchwood, but she explains, why she loves it, and she's so much more interesting as a character that I don't like being part of Torchwood just to save the world or whatever. It's because it's intoxicating. Like, she's, that's the word she uses. It grabs such a hold of her, and it's the whole interesting story of Gwen is like, I know Julie Gardner says this a lot, it's like the working mother thing of, balancing, prioritizing your family and balancing your work, and this work is something that Gwen loves for, so many reasons. So it's a really interesting thing, and it's another reason, why I feel like Miracle Day, there's another huge reason I'll get into later that I know Gig's a bit skeptical of, why I think Miracle Day had to happen, but definitely a big one is, now that Gwen has a family, I think we needed to see, now that it's not just Reese, it's, a child as well, we need to see if Torchwood re-enters her life and she's part of it. How does that go? How does that drama work? How does Reese react? How does the baby react? How does Gwen
How does the baby probably cries a lot?
Does she travel hopefully, or does she unravel hopefully, to quote Dylan? So there was definitely a direction worth going in.
Back in the series 1 finale, the same conversation comes up with Rose in the chip shop with her mom and Mickey, talking about, admittedly, it's only very slightly different traveling with the Doctor. It's standing up, it's making a choice, it's being important. And then, of course, this is shortly after Davies himself wrote the Doctor himself saying that he's not just a survivor, he's the winner. So in this way, surviving Torchwood makes her very special. It makes her the victor.
Absolutely, I get what you're saying, yeah. That's a great point. I love that.
She also has a line sort of referring to this viewpoint, I guess, not as clearly, but in Children of Earth, when she's speaking to Rupesh, and they're talking about the woman who was a Christian, and then the alien life appeared and she killed herself. Because it made her life feel smaller, and then Gwen says that she went through that, and it makes it all brilliant. But then it's like she says, so the whole world is bigger, my life is bigger. You know, that sort of there's, and I love that about Gwen. It's like the idea that, in a sense, that as much as she is a hero and she's got this great depth of empathy and care for others, when you sort of peel back the layers and you get down to the core of it, in a sense, her place in Torchwood is selfish almost. But it's a selfishness that is ultimately, like, it's in a sense not bad, because she's there for selfish reasons, but the work she does is selfless, because obviously she does have this empathy, and she cares about people, and she has the heart of the team in a sense. So it's not a bad thing that she is selfish about it, but it's a nice little sort of insight into, like, how her, it's not entirely selfless, basically.
Yeah, obviously we can't talk about it here, but Code, isn't it so interesting how this is developed in season 5? All the stuff we're talking about, so fascinating where they go with that. If I can diverge and digress a little bit, I've got to bring up the other reason I feel like Miracle Day had to happen, and this reason Gig despises that I try and sell. Is that an accurate assessment, Gig? Do you know
well, if it's to do with, I won't spoil it, but yeah, I'd say that's more. I don't know if I despise it, but I am definitely skeptical.
The reason I think Miracle Day had to happen is because I think Torchwood always needed, if not a season, at least a significant story in America. I think this was an inevitable thing that had to happen in Torchwood, and the reason for that is because Torchwood is, explicitly, the first idea for Torchwood is from this idea Russell T Davies had before Doctor Who for a show called Excalibur, which was basically just Buffy in the UK. His idea was always taking these Joss Whedon shows, these American shows, and doing them as Russell T Davies, doing them in the UK. Welsh spin on American television was, this idea. CSI Cardiff. First episode of Torchwood. Measuring the velocity of a kebab. Like, the novelty and humour and kind of premise of the show was always, what if America, but Wales? Which is all well and good, and it's done very well a lot of the time, but I'd argue Torchwood had a lot of significant, unique stuff to it that wasn't just doing American stuff in Wales. I think it had a lot of stuff of its own that made it a really great and worthwhile show at times in the first 3 series. But I think to kind of test the tenability of the premise, it had to actually go to America and say, so if we took all these ideas of doing American tropes in that and we actually did them in America, are we good enough? Is the show good enough? Are the characters strong enough that it could still feel novel and good in all the ways that Torchwood is, if we remove that novelty? If it was just in America, could it still feel like Torchwood, and could it still be worth watching?
And the answer is no.
Yeah, the terrible bit is I don't think Miracle Day quite says yes, but I think it was a question that had to be asked of the show, and it's a huge shame. I don't think the season is the tremendous yes that I wanted to hear.
It's like Cyberwoman in that respect. It's something that had to happen, whether or not ultimately it's something that didn't work out, but it had to happen, and they kind of did their best. Well,
your silence is tearing me apart here.
I wonder if, because we talked earlier about how for r.t.d, the purpose of Torchwood and the nature of it transformed post-Children of Earth into being this somewhat different thing. Like, certainly the whole Buffy model has been kind of left in the past by then. So with Miracle Day, I'm not sure if Miracle Day is actually answering the question you want answered at all, even if it's not necessarily like saying yes to it. I think what you we're not really getting that classic Torchwood transposed to America so much as a few dribs and drabs of it. So Jack and Gwen transposed into something that is more conventional in some ways, like the whole conspiracy thriller thing. Like that's just sort of taken almost wholesale from the American kind of cliche basket. So you still get nice kind of Welsh bits of Torchwood, and those bits are good. I say those bits still work in the kind of Americanized setting. So that's kind of a yes. Those bits are a yes, but I'm not sure overall if it's being that useful in terms of using America to evolve Torchwood.
Firstly, that's why it's interesting to me that the head writer of Miracle Day was Jane Espenson, who's, from these Joss Whedon shows, from Buffy. If this series was kind of more procedural and, Buffy-esque and more like series 1 and 2, it would be really interesting to see an actual Buffy writer writing this kind of Buffy knockoff. I wonder how that would have felt. That would have been so fascinating to see. It would have been like someone from the wilderness era of Doctor Who writing Doctor Who, which is obviously what happened. So it could have been really good. Who knows? The finale, the bloodline, it's interesting to me because it's very much, it feels so Welsh and Russell T Davies to me. The whole setup of it, this giant, extremely ionic, bizarre structure in the earth, with the blood going through it, and it's the antipodes and all this, kind of Doctor Who-y nonsense. And
Jack does resolve it the exact same way he did End of Days, by posing in sort of cruciform and going, ah! Or something comes out of his chest.
It's very more classic Torchwood, which is interesting. As for the whale scenes, what's interesting is because this season was plotted out all in advance, they got pretty much 9 scripts done, on time and earlier before they started filming. They were going to do all the Welsh filming in Wales. They had 3 weeks allotted for filming there. And so they got the first 9 episodes scenes in Wales. They actually filmed in Wales. And they had Russell T Davies and Julie Gardner decided they could not do any UK exteriors in America because it would look wrong. The lighting would look wrong. The bricks would look wrong. It just wouldn't be authentic, and it would be a really shitty thing to do for a Welsh show and all the UK fans. So that's all well and good. But because episode 10 was such a mess and finished late and everything, all the Welsh scenes in that episode, which are like PC Andy in the overflow camp place and all that, they were all filmed on the Warner Brothers lots in America. So they had to fly Welsh people out.
They flew Andy out to America?
They flew Andy, and they flew Gwen's dad's actor and everyone. So they had to do that on, a famous Warner Brothers soundstage.
Andy got a holiday.
Yeah, because of late writing the episodes.
It's a really nice backlot, too. It's a lot of fun. I understand it's since burned down, which is a shame.
But that concludes my 2 points. It became 3 points.
And, you said to me at one point, actually, that you love the visual style of...
Oh, I do.
Miracle Day. Yeah. I don't give a shit about it. I mean, it looks nicer. Of course it does, and it's more HD. But it's the same... Right, it's the same issue with, Doctor Who. Going from, to Series 11. Series 11 is very insistent on sort of, Netflix inspired and all that stuff. That sort of visual style, it feels so lifeless compared to the sort of shittier, low budget sort of thing that...
The thing with Miracle Day's style is for the first 3 episodes they were using wide angle lenses and stuff like that, and they had better cameras in general, and I'm not going to bore you with all the transcoding shit, but yeah, it looks much better. You'll notice this, especially if you have the Blu-rays, how much better it looks because of better cameras and better working on it and whatnot. But after the first 2 episodes, they went back to using the traditional long lenses and practical lighting that the first 3 series of Torchwood used. So most of the second half of the series is actually filmed very much the same way the first 3 series was, and you can tell because you get so much more close shots on the characters' faces and much less of the wider framing of people that we get, especially in the premiere episode, which was directed by a director who only did that episode for series 4.
The interiors feel very different from the last half too.
Yeah, that's actually true now that you're saying it. But I've only really rewatched the early first 3 episodes.
Series 1 and 2 were Murray Gold, who composed the Chris Eccleston, David Tennant, Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi years of Doctor Who, and who else was doing? Who was doing series 1 and 2 with... Was it Ben Foster was with Murray?
Yeah.
And then 3rd series, Children of Earth, was all Ben Foster. Series 4 went back to Murray Gold, and he had an assistant composer with him.
And you can tell.
Yeah.
Let me be honest. You can tell right away. There's a very Doomsday-esque. Goldian, but I was going to say Doomsday-esque guitar riff that plays when
I like.
Angelo dies.
Yeah. What I like about the Miracle Day music is Murray was clearly trying to kind of Americanize it a bit. We get so much of the electric guitar, like with the wah-wah pedals and stuff around, especially Oswald. He gets the guitar stuff around him all the time. I like that the music, because it could have felt just like Series 1 and 2, since it was, one of the two same composers of that. But I like that he kind of did a bit of that. There's even a piano theme we get that feels awfully close to Owen's Series 2 theme. But a lot of it he was trying for a new style as well. And I guess that's Miracle Day in general, was, had the DNA of the old show, but it was trying to do new things, perhaps not to great effects. But honestly, I feel like if Miracle Day was good, I don't think we'd be caring as much that this didn't feel like classic Torchwood. If it was good, we'd be saying, I hope the next thing might feel like this. But it wasn't that good, and so we're not saying that.
The composer for Torchwood on audio actually talks a bit about themes and stuff, like the musical themes and behind the scenes for Series 5. Yeah, he says Miracle Day was more sort of electronic-y sort of thing.
I'm going to talk about Rex now because, well, none of you are going to be able to stop me.
We've got no choice.
So, Rex Matheson. I have a very love-hate relationship with Rex. I used to pretty much just not care about the character because I had barely any interest in Torchwood in general, and of the main Torchwood cast, I only cared about Jack, and even then only because he was in Series 1 of Doctor Who. But, and I just thought of Rex as a bland rip-off of Jack Bauer from 24. Only, not white, and not old, and not intimidating or interesting. But since then, I've sort of come to reconsider, and especially on this latest rewatch, God, I love Rex Matheson. He's hilarious. Specifically, the way I see it is, every writer has their own somewhat fractured take on him. And the only two writers that really make him work are Jane Espenson, who can seemingly write anything.
Yeah, she's great.
And Davies, of course. And what Davies does with Rex is Davies makes Rex into this perfect foil for Jack. Because he is the American secret agent. And I also would point out that a lot of the more homophobic content involving Rex is not written by Davies. He's much more of a impulsive character. He gets fixated on things. He chatters uncontrollably. He's so fun as a Davies character. And I wish I could have seen more of Davies' take on Rex. I wish I could have seen probably the best non-Davies and non-Espenson Rex scene is in episode 6, I think, when he's chained up and arguing with the camp director
Colin Maloney.
Colin Maloney, thank you. And I mean, that's a great scene, but it's very noticeable even on the first watch just how stupid Rex seems in that scene, because he's not noticing that Colin is obviously planning on killing him and trying to find some way to do it. Which is such a beautiful... For that character, Colin, it's an amazing scene. It's one of, the best scenes in the series. But it's so out of character for Rex that he would be so stupid in that scene. But I really wish we could have seen Davies' take on that. I choose to believe that Rex is exactly as immortal as Jack and will live forever, so that someday in the future we can have a reunion, which I would love, because I have officially converted to the church of Jack's shipping. And so I've been absolutely incensed with you, Code, this entire time. Every time you talk shit about the American characters, I grit my teeth a little harder and just try to ignore it. But I can't. I seethe, I cope, I'm verged.
To make you happy, there's a singular Jack and Rex fanfiction available for you.
Excellent!
Written before the series even aired, based entirely on set photos and what few trailers they had. I've not read it. It's pretty short, but the content's there for you.
It's possible that I wrote it, so
yeah, just half asleep, sort of typing it up. Yeah, of course.
That's how I'm writing my Thasmin stories.
Oh God! No, don't mention Thasmin. He'll go off his shit.
Are we praying that Big Finish never gets the rights to Rex? Or will they do like a prequel box set where they kill him off?
Well, you guys keep saying that the Torchwood stuff that Big Finish is doing is good, so sure, why not?
Can you talk about what scenes made me cry? I'll tell you what scenes made me cry. There is one scene, and it made me cry, when Jack is speaking to old, dying Angelo, and was this the only scene? Maybe there was another one that made me cry. I don't remember, but I just remember losing it over this one. And he asks, and he finds out Angelo had been watching him his whole life, and then he asks, he's talking away, and then he's like, "Did you see him? Did you see Yanto?" I fucking lost it.
I knew it.
I was a mess. I don't know why it hit me so hard. It was just, yeah.
I know why.
Why?
Because it's about Yanto.
Yeah, basically.
I cried at a point in Miracle Day as well, and it was in the finale when the plot was revealed to be all typical Russell T Davies New World Order conspiracy theory shit.
New, absolutely seething.
In Series 1 of Doctor Who, the Slovene, the Tony Blair Iraq War stuff, and then in the long game and the Series 1 finale, the Daleks and Satellite 5 and all that. And then it's in Years and Years as well with, you know, Vivian Rook's connections and all this kind of stuff. r.t.d seems to really like this stuff, you know, commenting on or parroting on or just outright using these tropes of New World Order, you know, the secret Illuminati conspiracy of people that are in control of everything. And I hate it in Miracle Day because what Miracle Day was working with well was like what the Ghostbuster says in episode 6, The Middlemen, that, you know, the whole system is corrupt and there's individual evil enabled by it, like that Colin guy who shoots Vera and that horrifics, he's so utterly despicable. It really freaks me out, that
the
stuff.
The system isn't the problem.
Well,
the middlemen who use and exploit the system, that's the problem.
Well, it's like what the series was doing kind of interesting was, you know, showing how the miracle exacerbates the problems of the system, you know, and like it empowers people like Colin because this is the way the system is set up, that this kind of institutional corruption, you know, happens and is so like kind of naturally coded into how these systems work and everything like that. But then at the end it's just, oh, there's actually, you know, these secret 3 families and they've been manipulating everything for so long to cause this. And I just hate it because it's so incongruent with, you know, any kind of meaningful understanding of the world. The climax of the series, like this revelation that these secret mafia families drop some blood down 2 sides of the earth. Like, what? Like, who cares? This is terrible.
It has nothing to do with the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how utterly shit Children of Earth would have been if they revealed at the end that the whole thing was part of a New World Order plan to make the Earth devolve into fascism? Yeah. Can you imagine
Or for that matter, if the 456 hadn't shown up until day 5.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the point.
Crying then too.
It's so stupid.
Hey, Neil. Hey.
Yeah. Hi.
We'll talk about it in series 5 actually, podcast. Because sorry, something the audios do. A plot line the audios do.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
Does it have something to do with the 3 families?
No.
Sounds like a yes.
What we can say definitively is that Miracle Day is a perfect example of why nothing good was ever designed by committee.
Perfectly done. Something interesting, different in the Welsh scenes versus the American scenes to me is specifically how the overflow camps are realised. In that, in the American ones, we have this evil Colin figure that shot Vera we're talking about, who, you know, hides what the burning ovens are for. And, you know, even that soldier with him, Ralph, asks what it's for, and he's always told, don't ask questions or whatever. But meanwhile, over in the Welsh camps, everything's much more...
Everyone knows.
Everything's... Yeah, and they know. It's this willful kind of ignorance. Like this doctor Gwen is talking
burn
to...
Just
kind of turns it away. And yeah, it's called a burn unit. And she just... It's like this I'm just following orders thing. And it's this interesting... This chaos versus order. And it's both evil just in fascinatingly different ways that I guess r.t.d. or whoever was writing these episodes trying to realise kind of these cultural differences. I thought that was quite fascinating.
Good point about just following orders. Andy Davidson... at the end of episode 1, that's how he acts when they're doing the rendition thing. Because he basically says, doesn't it? He's just following orders.
Yeah. A lot of people say that in this. Because
I love Andy.
Ties into
So cute.
the whole thing of complicity, which is one of my favorite themes in this series.
Speaking of words starting with C, I've got a final commentary corner regarding Andy and complicity. And what it is originally...
I'm so excited.
In earlier drafts of the finale, I forget why they didn't realise this. I don't think it was not enough money. I think it was... they said it was distracting from the main bloodline stuff. But originally, you know when he's in that kind of bunker camp with Gwen's father and everyone, and that's, you know, where we finally see him die when the breath happens and death is returned to the world. Well, originally, because he knows Gwen and the Torchwood team are, you know, doing something to try and stop the miracle, the staff come into like the bunker and are trying to take the bodies to burn, like Gwen's father to burn everything, and Andy pulls his gun on them and threatens them, you know, to stay back, and that he's going to protect these people for as long as he can because he knows Gwen is trying to do something. And
why?
They cut it in the end because they thought not only was it they didn't like how it sat in the episode. So they never even shot this, but in the script they didn't like how it sat in the episode because they thought it was distracting from the Rex and the Jack, you know, settings, but also because
I wish I was distracted from that.
They thought it was too reminiscent of Children of Earth, you know, where the whole plot line with him and Gwen are trying to hold off the military just for as long as they can to protect children, so Jack might have a bit more time to try and solve the issue.
I get the point, but the problem with having Andy be complicit in Miracle Day is that he does have that moment of, you know, in Children of Earth. Even that just one scene there, if that had been in the episode, it would have solved the issue of Andy having been complicit this entire time.
Which brings me to something that I'd like to talk about, I'd like to complain about, which is the entire treatment of death in Miracle Day.
Yes.
The way that it starts out with such a strong and vibrant and fascinating concept, and then it just falls apart. People just start dying again, essentially. Within the narrative, people are dead.
Well, even in episode 1, when they shoot down the helicopter, when Gwen shoots down that chopper...
Yeah, those people are still alive.
Yeah, on the commentary, they talked about putting, like, screams of them over, like, in the audio, and they decided against it because it was distracting or something. But I felt like you're kind of betraying the concept of the show if you basically just kill people. Like, when the whole idea is you can't kill people. We should have seen their burnt bodies or heard them screaming when Gwen and Jack smile to each other or something. Would have made the moment more interesting and disturbing.
Yeah.
But on this notion of death being underused as a concept in the series, there's this great article on the eruditorum.press.com by Jill Barato, who's Elizabeth Sandifer's wife and who's a nurse that especially specialises in end-of-life issues, called Miracle Day and Death. And the whole thing is basically about, because she works with, you know, the patients dying and, you know, the whole concept of death and everything.
That was a really upsetting article, yeah.
This series misses a trick because the interesting thing about the miracle is that it should be like the logical endpoint to this pathologizing death we do in culture, where, you know, this anti-euthanasia stuff we're all about, we've got to prolong life as long as we can, no matter the quality of life. Just the concept of life is so important. People need to live in, you know, impossible pain or, you know, brainlessness, because being alive is always better than death. Is this idea very embedded in a lot of cultures? That's, you know, she argues, and I'd agree, is, you know, very flawed. And the interesting idea, which, you know, Vera, the doctor in Miracle Day, you know, touches on, is this is silly because, you know, it's these lives that people are living because they can't die anymore are not good lives in a lot of places. And obviously the solution isn't to burn them alive, you know, especially when it's done for political reasons, the category zeros and things. But this idea of prolonging life as not being inherently good and as an opportunity to explore the real world concerns of this obsession with life at all costs and the way that's flawed, that would be a really good place to have taken the miracle consistently. But it doesn't really, and even Vera, the Doctor herself, has this line of, we don't deserve the miracle because of how we, treat people.
Yeah.
Even that is treating the miracle like something good in the first place, which I'd argue it never was, because as we discover in the third episode, people still age. If we still age normally, imagine how you would be at age 200. You see people, even at advanced ages, without the miracle.
What you would do?
The naked mole rat.
You would turn into a
giant head.
You would turn into a giant head. You would be a face.
We will be faces of Bo.
It's frustrating because, like she says in this article, the series is really well poised to explore these very relevant, interesting concerns. And more, how Code was saying earlier, the pedophile stuff with Oswald is, it's very well-trodden ground. This stuff is done in lots of other narratives, and we're very familiar with it just in not even media, just real-world narratives. But this idea of, prolonging life is not always good or even horrific. This is a much more rare narrative and a much more interesting narrative. And
much more taboo topic.
Much more taboo, which is so Russell T Davies, and we don't really get that much of it, which is, a grand shame.
Arguably, even Moffat explores it more with his Doctor Who, in Capaldi particularly, with his finales.
And the finale, when he's gonna, get shot and puts blood in the big thing, the big crack, I thought it was quite fascinating when Gwen offers to shoot him, because I think she says it would never be a suicide for you or something like that. She says she has a line like that, which I think would be interesting, and I think that makes sense enough for Jack's character. I don't think he would ever do that, but I think he would become. See, if ever he was mortal enough to be able, because he is reckless anyway. But if he was ever made mortal and it stayed that way, I think if he chose to go out, it would probably be he would be increasingly reckless. I think it was a fascinating little character thing, saying that to him. But then also, does she really know him to that level? Who knows?
I think that Jack, if ever Jack was going to become mortal permanently, he would probably die of old age while saying something really mysterious to the Doctor.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if they did that plot line. Wink, wink.
Yeah, it's the thing that's been deprived Jack with his immortality is the ability to, it's the same thing with Tennant Rose almost, the being able to actually just live out a normal life and just have a good death and just a normal death,
yeah.
and just not having to watch everyone leave him and so on and so forth. So it's if he were to become permanently mortal, I think certainly he would not want to have that then, to just be abruptly murdered by some random, conspiracy.
Yeah.
I think he'd maybe at least want to have a proper life, which is what he's never had.
Yeah.
Another point connecting back to Gridlock and the face of Bo is the whole idea of Jack's template, the Earth basing around it, and that becoming what all the people are based on and how their lives work. Becoming immortal from his blood, his template, and everything that drains away his own energies, and his own existence as a fixed point and whatever. But that's pretty much what happens in Gridlock, because remember how he uses his own life energy, the face of Bo, to sustain New York's population until the 10th Doctor manages to save everyone, and then he finally dies. So there's a little interesting DW for you.
So connected.
Also, Gridlock kind of disproves Gwen's comment that Jack was never going to be a suicide, because Face of Bo essentially sacrifices his own life, doesn't he?
Yeah.
To save the Gridlock people. So Gwen was wrong all along. Or maybe Jack's final act was to prove Gwen wrong, that actually he can sacrifice himself for real.
That's in character for him. That is totally in character for him.
One last thing about Rex. I can't help but think that the cliffhanger with Rex becoming immortal, it feels to me like one saving throw too many, and what it reminds me of is the cliffhanger at the end of Class. Because something similar ended up happening, which is that it didn't get continued or picked up in any way. We're just how can we okay, we're going to have another immortal, guys, okay? And it's cute in terms of, paralleling Jack and whatever, but at the same time, having, one of the new American characters become an immortal, similar to Jack, it just feels like the point in which the premise of Torchwood has been pushed so far that it becomes apparent that they might be out of ideas. Because, really, do we need another immortal that's the best you've got? And that's supposed to hook us for another season? I'm not sure, guys.
Let's be honest here. It's the shark.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's like they wanted to make it bigger and bigger and bigger, while forgetting that part of what made Torchwood so charming in the first place is that it was small.
Something I kind of note about Miracle Day, and in terms of how it's escalating the scale and all of that stuff, is that what Torchwood itself comes to mean as a concept is slowly morphing, because even further from how it had morphed in Series 3, because I think they say in one of the early episodes, I think Rex basically, in terms of people asking, what the hell's this Torchwood thing? And Rex says it's like a code word to connect us. And at another point, they compare Torchwood to basically, I think maybe Jack says that they're freedom fighters, and they say, okay, we're like freedom fighters, and Vera's like, isn't that like terrorists? And I can't help but think that that's a fundamental change in the premise of what Torchwood is, to make them out to be freedom fighters or rebels, or like just like this spirit of resistance or whatever. Like, yeah, it's a huge change because Torchwood started out as this, this imperialist organization, and we see how in Series 1 and 2 that this clandestine, they're this clandestine thing that's above the police, and they cause all these sorts of problems because they're hoarding all this alien technology. And Series 3 deconstructed that so beautifully by showing how that, that network of systems and surveillance and secrecy, how all of that unspooled into a total chaos as soon as the wrong kind of alien shows up. So for Series 4 to be doing this thing where, actually, Torchwood good, that seems to me to be somewhat losing sight of what was kind of running through the show up to that point. And not to, delve into the audios. I haven't finished Series 5. I'm not even very far into Series 5 at all. But the audios in generally, and James Goss's stewardship of Torchwood, kind of takes it back in maybe a more realistic direction for what Torchwood means.